Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Sriman Narayana. Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Suravangsha Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
Om Hari Om. Om Tat Sat. Namaste, everyone. It is absolutely my pleasure to be here with you today on this Sunday, 2 p.m. Vedic Heartland time, what otherwise is known as Central Time, Omaha time, Nebraska time, etc. Before we begin today, first of all, let me thank Krishna Prasada for doing that wonderful puja. And let me thank both Rukmini and Savitri for leading that wonderful bhajan, one of my favorites. I want to thank all of our local congregants here in the Vedic Heartland for being here with us today, as well as our international audience of people from throughout the world. And before we begin with my talk for today, first, just a very quick announcement that I want to tell people, kind of an announcement and an explanation, actually. And that is this. People know that the next book that our many supporters, followers, members of the International Sanatana Dharma Society, the next book that they're expecting to be released is a new edition of one of my first books called Radical Universalism. And people have been waiting for this for quite a few months now. It was supposed to have come out several months ago. And I kind of told some of our leading devotees this on our Discord server a few weeks ago. But I want to tell everyone now that it was delayed for some time. That was my fault. The reason why is because having redone the book, and I added something like 60 pages to the original edition, the original of which came out in 2007. I added about 60 pages to that, and I redid the entire book, actually. For those who have the first edition, which is quite rare, it's almost impossible to get now because it is out of print. When you read this new edition that will come out, you'll see a little bit of what was in the first edition, but otherwise it's been changed dramatically. And let me tell people, after I added another 60 pages and I felt that it was ready, I gave a talk during our conference, the International Sanatana Dharma Conference that was in August. And the talk was entitled something like Authentic Sanatana Dharma versus Neo-Hinduism. And that talk was a very important one. It's one of the most important talks that exists now, actually, as far as our library of videos. If you haven't seen that talk, I strongly suggest that you do, and it's available everywhere on all of our platforms. Well, having given that talk, I thought about it, and I was inspired to then expand the book even more. And I did. I expanded the book by, I'm not exactly sure, I did several counts, but then I expanded more, and then I would count the page numbers, I would expand it more. I would say I've added a minimum, probably another 70 pages to the book. So compared to the first edition, this is over twice the size of the first edition, by far, actually. And the reason why it was important for me to do so is because I realized that even having expanded it once, I did not talk enough about what was the root problem in Sanatana Dharma today. You see, it's not merely radical universalism, i.e. this false notion that all religions are the same, all paths are equal, all paths take you to the same destination. Not only is it the case that that is nonsensical and was never taught in traditional Sanatana Dharma, but I felt that I needed to go even deeper to explain not just where that idea came from, which I already extensively did, but even with more depth, and even more to explain what was actually the ideological foundation of even that false statement, that all religions are the same, and that is something called Neo-Hinduism. Something that academically it's called that. You know, it's not a term that I created, it's a term that has been used for several generations now, actually. And I felt that I needed to get to the very root of the problem, and that is that really when you look at Sanatana Dharma today, let's say the Vedic community, in 2023, and really for many generations now, starting approximately 200 years ago, what you see are two separate phenomena. On the one hand, you find those individuals who indeed attempt to follow Sanatana Dharma in as authentic and traditionalist and orthodox a way as possible. And what does that really mean? 100% in accordance with the Vedic scriptures. That simple. You have that one camp, on the other hand, actual Sanatana Dharma. But then in the other camp, you have what sometimes is called Neo-Hinduism, sadly what today is called Hinduism in general, very often. And that is something radically different. In fact, it's almost the opposite. And without repeating my talk, that again, I spoke about this for an hour. Again, the video is available, just look for it. Authentic Sanatana Dharma versus Neo-Hinduism. I speak about this more in depth than any other human being in the history of humanity ever has in that 1 hour talk. Rather than repeating that, let me just say that what the Neo-Hindus, that is this movement, what does Neo mean? It means new. The new Hindus, the new Hinduism so-called, which is of course an oxymoron. The new Sanatana Dharma, the new eternal natural way. You see the oxymoron that's there. Well, Neo-Hinduism does not represent Sanatana Dharma. And what is so terrible is that the Neo-Hindus, having corrupted what Sanatana Dharma really was, they practically won, to the point where if a person thinks of Hinduism, they tend to think of Neo-Hindu ideas, not Vedic ideas. And again, I'm not going to go in depth. You know I can. I gave an hour-long talk, but in the book, even more so than the talk, I analyze and I critique every important idea that the Neo-Hindu movement, which is only 200 years old, every single pronouncement, every single dogma, every single tenet that the Neo-Hindu movement has, I critique and I demolish in atomic form. That's what I do in the new book that is called Radical Universalism. In addition to tackling that one issue, are all religions the same? The book is now finished. It will be published within the next several weeks. The finishing touches are being done on the cover. Again, as far as my writing, could I write more? Sure. I can, but I have vowed to myself, I'm done. I have said what I have to say. There's a quick proofread that's happening right now that one of our wonderful students is doing, and that should be finished by hopefully today. And to incorporate those corrections, that'll take maybe 2 hours or so. The book will be coming out within the next several weeks. When it does, it is going to be philosophically an atomic bomb. I've said this to people. This is going to be probably the second most important book that the International Sanatana Dharma Society has published. The first being Sanatana Dharma, the Eternal Natural Way, because that is our magnum opus. That is our Summa Theologica. So that book aside, this book, Radical Universalism, will be the second most important book published by our movement. When it comes out, and obviously we will announce when it comes out, I strongly suggest that everyone buys this book if you want to understand what Sanatana Dharma is and what Sanatana Dharma especially is not, and especially in the modern context. And for those of you who don't quite know this yet, oh, you're going to be amazed. If you are an Indian Hindu born in Sanatana Dharma, you will be amazed how many things you learned supposedly from your parents, in school, from so many fraudulent gurus that you think is Sanatana Dharma, and they taught you the opposite. You're going to be shocked. If you're an individual who you're not an Indian Hindu, you are, let's say, a Western practitioner of Sanatana Dharma, even you will be amazed that there are some fundamental tenets that are there that people for, again, several generations now just assumed, oh yes, this is Sanatana Dharma, and I show you exactly where the idea came from, when the idea originated, who originated it, and I have their quotes. So indeed, this is going to be a very, very important book that I'm hoping will once and for all restore pure and authentic Sanatana Dharma to the world, divorced from a Hinduism that has thoroughly capitulated to modernity. So this is what this book is going to do. Is this going to be a revolutionary book that's going to be, again, like a literary atomic bomb? That's putting it lightly. It was actually, even when it was first published in 2007, it was read by over 1 million people, both in article form, in essay form, on hundreds of websites. It was the early internet. It was a very different era, but also in book form. Now this next second edition is going to make that seem like nothing. So with that, the book will be coming out. We are now going to jump into our talk for today, and this talk is Shiva's prayers to Sriman Narayana. And this is going to be several verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam that I did not translate. Also, Prabhupada did not translate. So let me say, these verses are not perfect. I looked at and I know the Sanskrit to these verses. They're not translated perfectly, but it was a good attempt, so we're going to use this translation. Again, this is not Prabhupada's translation. This was an individual who was a disciple of Prabhupada, who came after Prabhupada, who translated these verses. So we will begin. First with Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 10, Chapter 63 and verse 34. This is Lord Shiva himself speaking, and he's speaking very specifically to Narayana. Let me make this clear. How do we know this? Because what is this? Verse 34. In verse 23, previous, it is stated that he is speaking to Narayana by name. It is in the Sanskrit. Feel free to look it up. So this is Lord Shiva speaking to Narayana. Śrī Rudra, who is a name of Lord Shiva, Śrī Rudra said, "You alone are the absolute truth, the supreme light, the mystery hidden within the verbal manifestation of the absolute. Those whose hearts are spotless can see you, for you are uncontaminated like the sky." Like the sky. So as you can tell by the title of this talk, this is very specifically a prayer that Lord Shiva is praying unto Sriman Narayana. And it goes on for a long time, actually, even longer than the verses that we have here. Obviously, I didn't want to do the full prayer because then we would be focusing on this for many, many, many weeks. Instead, I just chose this section because it's especially illustrative of the entire prayer. So let's go through this a little bit. First, Lord Shiva again says to Sriman Narayana, "You alone are the absolute truth." Here, let's get back to radical universalism. Polytheism. Polytheism, 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 polytheism. Followers of Sanatana Dharma are not polytheistic. Now, it's understandable and it's forgivable that that mistake would be there. because indeed there are many, many different beings, indeed very powerful beings, gods, goddesses, devas, devis, within Sanatana Dharma. Indeed, we have a pantheon even of the most important of them, as is the case for all pre-Abrahamic cultures. Now, this being the case, because they're very powerful beings who are there within Sanatana Dharma, of course, on a cursory glance, an individual can look and make the mistake of thinking that, oh yes, Sanatana Dharma is a religion that believes that when you reach that which is the ontological highest supreme reality, what you will find would be a round table somewhat akin to the knights of King Arthur sitting around a round table, and instead of knights you would have gods and goddesses, and they have committee meetings, and that is the highest manifestation of reality. Of course, in stating this, of course, it sounds silly, and it sounds silly because it is silly. No, of course, that's not what we believe. We don't believe that there is ultimately a committee of gods as the supreme Brahman. We don't believe even that there is a triune of gods, that there is Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh. That was something that was especially brought to the fore by the early Indologists because they were Christians and they got so excited that they saw the number 3. Again, historically, that is actually exactly what happened. Oh, you have the Trimurti, you have these 3 beings, but you have all sorts of combinations of numbers in Vedic spirituality. That specific combination of a so-called trinity is really of not that much importance if you look at the totality of the Vedic scriptures. But no, in Sanatana Dharma, we acknowledge that there are many powerful beings. In the same way that if a person was human and living upon the earth, wouldn't it be silly to say, no, there are no human beings who are powerful, we're all equal? Oh, no, nonsense. Even in the former Soviet Union, people understood, oh, there are us, this actual citizens, then there are the members of the Politburo of the Communist Party, and they're not like us, we're not like them. They have absolute power, we have no power. We understand that even among humans. We understand that, oh, yes, I have my ideas, etc., but then there's Elon Musk. I have my ideas, I have my little home, I have this, I have my little money in the bank account. Oh, but then there is fill in the blank with your favorite billionaire. So we know this even amongst humans. Well, when we look at the grand scale of the cosmos, is it surprising that there are beings who are extremely powerful to the point where they are literally deva. Deva means being of light. To the point where if they were to appear, we would have to cover our eyes, otherwise risk almost going blind, because their brilliance shines forth so powerfully that we can barely even look upon them. And they're just a minuscule little god. They're just a being like us, but they have much more power. But those beings are servants of the Absolute. And who is that Absolute? Well, one of the most powerful of these beings just told you. Again, he is speaking specifically to Sriman Narayana, not anyone. He's not addressing the totality of any specific pantheon, or 3 gods, or 10 gods, or 33 gods. He's speaking to one being. He says, again, the Sanskrit for this is quite correct, actually, because I looked at it. You alone. Not you and fill in the blank. No, you alone, who he is addressing, Sriman Narayana, are the absolute truth, that than which nothing is higher. Now let's go on. Now he qualifies. Further, he says, the supreme light. What is meant by this? Well, this is something that is spoken of in many of the scriptures, including in the Bhagavad Gita, actually, where it's explained that, oh, in this world there are many lights. Right now, trust me, I can attest to this. I have many lights on me. But in addition to modern electric lights, of course we have the sun, of course we have the moon, of course we have stars, we have fire, etc., etc. There are many lights that are within this world. Indeed, what did I just describe? That any deva, any devi, any god or goddess also is a being of light who emanates light from them. And I described how powerful that light is. Well, that light is nothing. The lights that are on me right now are nothing. The light of the sun, even as great as the sun is, and we worship Surya Deva. But that light has its source in the light of God. So the supreme light, let's go on. The mystery hidden within the verbal manifestation of the Absolute. Now, for those individuals who are truly steeped in authentic Vedic knowledge, we know what that means. Indeed, it is a mystery for those who do not understand the Vedas. So when Lord Shiva here says the mystery hidden, well, it's a mystery for those who don't know, which means the vast majority of individuals. But for those of us who are devotees of Narayana, we understand what that mystery is. The mystery hidden within the verbal manifestation of the Absolute, that means the name of God. That means the name of God, and in this context, very specifically Omkara. That is Om, A-U-M. And it's spelled A-U-M, not O-M. It's A-U-M, Om. What Lord Shiva is saying here is that you are that hidden essence of sacred sound itself. Sacred sound itself, of course, being the names of God, because by extension, not simply Om, but all of the names of God, and most specifically in mantric form. So all of the sacred mantras, and there are many in the Vedic scriptures, but one of the foremost of which is the primary mantra that we meditate upon, Om Namo Narayanaya. These sacred sounds that are sacred because they are the name of God themselves contain an essence. And what is that essence? For most individuals, it is indeed hidden. It is indeed a mystery. But for those individuals who have devotion toward God, all that mystery is taken away. And we understand that it is the very essence of God himself. Let's go on. Those whose hearts are spotless can see you. So again, explaining what I just said, actually. For those individuals who are devotees, for those individuals who have devotion, that is, for those individuals whose hearts are pure, it's no mystery. There's no mystery. Nothing remains hidden. We understand God. To bring this down, because it's very apropos, actually, to bring this down to terrestrial terms such that we can understand. When you and your beloved, your girlfriend, your fiancé, your wife, when you are courting, initially, of course, the person who is your beloved, is a mystery. Who they truly are is hidden. But is it not the case that the more you come to know them, after days, weeks, months, years, and it being a healthy, pure, and truly loving relationship, you come to know them more and more and more, and that mystery begins to disappear, and that hiddenness begins to disappear as well? It is indeed the case. But now let's go further. Is it the case that if it's true love between two individuals who are good, who are pure, and truly love each other in the purest of ways, is it the case that once you can no longer describe your relationship with each other as a mystery, as something where the inner person is hidden, is it the case that the depthfulness by which you can know them stops? Never stops. The depthfulness continues. Well, in the same way, for we who are devotees, indeed, let me be blunt about this. I've tried to make it clear so far, but let me be blunt. For we who are God's devotees, God is not a mystery to us. A, and B, God is not hidden from us anymore. However, our depth in understanding God, in knowing God, only ever increases and will continue to for eternity. Very good. But now, those whose hearts are spotless can see you. Indeed, this is the process. How do we come to this point where we know God? And again, not just intellectually. Intellectually is a nice tool, but it's necessary, but it's not sufficient. How do we come to truly know God? Our hearts are meant to be spotless. What does this mean? It means we make ourselves pure. And does this mean all of the externalities of ethics and virtue and morality? Yes. Yes, it does. Any left-hand path predator who tries to tell you otherwise is justifying his measly existence. No. The gods follow morality. Dharma. We follow morality. The true acharyas follow morality. Indeed, we are to do this. But at the same time, does purifying our hearts mean only morality? It means that too, and that's the foundation, but no, deeper. It means that we purify our honesty. It means that we purify our sincerity. It means that we purify our love. Our love, our love. Who in this world, including the evilest people, interestingly, does not claim that they want love? Everyone. Everyone claims that. But who truly wishes a love that is so pure, that is so selfless, that is so beautiful, to the point where we can come to the point of absolute and complete self-surrender at the feet of God with complete, not just sincerity, but honesty. To the point where, at our best of times, but also at our worst of times, our words to God, when everything seems to have fallen apart around us, when it seems that we are surrounded by nothing but blackness, and yet still we have the ability to say to God within our minds, within our hearts, God, even at this moment, indeed especially at this moment, I surrender my life unto you. And to actually mean it when you say that. This is how we become spotless within. So this is what Lord Shiva is saying. If you have the ability to become that spotless, oh, you will know God. And now Lord Shiva continues addressing Narayana. For you are uncontaminated, because Narayana is spotless. Therefore we are to be spotless. We are to become God? No. Obviously not. We are to become like unto God. In the same way that God is pure, we are to be pure. In the same way that God is spotless, we are to be spotless. And we are to be spotless for this one reason. Because our source, God himself, is uncontaminated. And then very beautifully, like the sky. Like the sky. Of course, keep in mind when this was initially uttered, longer ago in history than you wish to even conceive. But imagine when this was uttered, we're talking about a Vedic sky. Not even the sky that you look at now with chemtrails and pollution. Same thing. We're talking about a Vedic sky, which when you looked up, your eyes could penetrate that sky to the point where even in the daytime you could practically see the stars. It was so pure. So beautiful analogy. Very good. That was 34. We will now go on. Now these are two verses in one. These are two verses. And we are going to go through this quickly, and I'll explain why afterwards once I have read these two verses to you. So this is now still Canto 10, chapter 63, verses 35 and 36. And this is still Lord Shiva addressing Narayana. The sky is your navel, fire your face, water your semen, the heaven your head. The cardinal directions are your sense of hearing. Herbal plants, the hairs on your body. The water-bearing clouds, the hair on your head. The earth is your foot. The moon is your mind, and the sun your vision. While I am your ego, that is Shiva. The ocean is your abdomen, Indra your arm, Lord Brahmā your intelligence, the progenitor of mankind your genitals, and Dharma your heart. You are indeed the original puruṣa, the original supreme person, creator of the worlds. Very beautiful, very powerful. And let me say, first of all, I am not going to comment on every single one of these clauses that are here, and let me explain why. The Vedic scriptures, 99, 98, 99%, let's say 99%, are meant to be taken extremely literally. Again, this is another very unfortunate Jungian approach that now has crept into Neo-Hinduism, where in order to show how smart people are, people will, in a very pretentious way, try to pretend that the vast majority of the content of the Vedic scriptures is meant to be symbolic. And what is meant by symbolic? Oh, now it gives us leeway, it gives us license to interpret it however we want. So it's a dishonest statement. No, there is some symbolism that is there. This is sacred literature. Of course, there's some symbolism. But 99% of the Vedic scriptures are to be taken literally. Now, of that roughly 1%, this is among the 1%, that we are to take this symbolically. So it's for that reason that I won't be commenting on all of this, because there's no reason to. Because, again, we can understand the symbolism. So I'll comment on some of these. Fire is your face. Fire is your face. What is meant by this? Again, it's symbolic. So when we look upon Narayana, it's like looking at a fire. And not just any fire. You know, this is the implication that's here. Not just any fire, but the greatest, the grandest, the purest, the most powerful of all fires. Such that if you were to find yourself before such a fire, what would the experience be? It would be one of grandeur. It would be one of majesty. It would be one of awe, in which you are face to face with the feel of that fire, the power of that fire. You are face to face with the brilliance of that fire, the light of that fire. Well, in a way, that is what it's like to look upon the face of God, the face of Narayana. And let there be no mistake. Let there be no mistake. Let there be no mistake. God has a face. No, not like your ugly face. You see, this is the difficulty that, again, lesser minds, Advaitins, Neo-Advaitins, New Age folk, Neo-Hindus, this is the mistake that they make, is one of anthropomorphism versus theomorphism. So therefore, when you say, oh, the face of God, they think to themselves, and this is where the Jungian analysis and symbolism, symbolic analysis comes in. Oh, how primitive. They think God has a face. They don't understand. That's just symbolic. No. They'll say, oh, yes. It's because, of course, we have faces, that they try to extrapolate, and they try to imagine that, oh, God must have a face like us, and blah, blah, blah. That's what's called anthropomorphism. That is, looking at humans around us and trying to then extrapolate and say, oh, God must be like us. That is not what is done in the Vedic scriptures. Rather, it is theomorphism. That is, that we are reflections of God. God has a face. That's the only reason why you have the face that you do. That's why I have my face, etc., etc. So indeed, God does indeed have a face. And that face is so powerful that when you look upon the face of God, it is like looking unto an inconceivably powerful and brilliant fire. Let's go on to a few more of these. And as I said, I'm not going to comment on all of these because of time, but also because it's not really necessary. I think most people can figure out what is being said by these various things. Let me say this, however, and this especially when it comes to the Sanskrit, this was translated sadly incorrectly by the translator. If you go down to, again, Lord Shiva speaking of himself, and he says, while I am your ego. That's not what the Sanskrit says. Ego is ahankara. That word is not found in the actual Sanskrit to this verse. Rather, interestingly, the word that is found is Atman, Atma, Atma. Long first A, long second A, Atma. So Lord Shiva, interestingly, says to, and indeed, this entire verse is mistranslated by the translator. I know Sanskrit better than him. I know the translator. I've met him personally. The actual clause in the Sanskrit is saying that I am Atma of yours. Big difference. Not I am your Atma, then he would be saying I am literally your soul. No, Shiva says I am that Atma in the plural of yours. Do you see the difference? Now, why is this crucial? Well, for those individuals who have listened to my talks in the past about the nature of Lord Shiva, Rudra himself, and if you've read the books, I talk about this a little bit. At some point in the further off future, I'm going to write an entire book on Lord Shiva and explaining conclusively once and for all, looking at Vedic scriptures that most Shaivas have never even heard of in their lives. And I will explain exactly who Lord Shiva is. And again, I've read these scriptures. Lord Shiva is the personification of the totality of what is called technically Tatashta Shakti. That is, finite Atmans as a whole. This is what Lord Shiva represents. And again, without going very deep, because I've given entire talks that are available as videos, you just look them up on YouTube. I think look on YouTube especially. That's where we have almost all of our videos. Just do a search and you'll see entire talks where for an hour I explain this. Lord Shiva here is confirming what I have tried to explain to people for years. And that is, this is what his nature is. This is why Lord Shiva is special. He is above the other devas, but he is not God. And those who mistake him for God are indeed making a technical error. Lord Shiva himself is saying what I have explained to you for many years. That is, that collectivity of finite souls, of finite Atmans, that has Narayana as their source, that is sometimes known as Tatashta Shakti. All of those Jivatmans in totality, Lord Shiva is the personification of. This is what he represents. He represents Atman, individual Atman, not God himself. And again, this correctly translated, which it was not, Lord Shiva himself is confirming this in this verse. Now, one could say, oh, Acharyaji, why didn't you just translate this correctly? Why are you bothering us with somebody's bad translation? And now you're kind of retranslating it correctly right here on the spot. Several reasons. I chose to do it this way. A, to show that when it comes to technical Sanskrit, people will often ask me, and I don't even bother answering anymore. People will ask me, oh, Acharyaji, what is a good translation of Rig Veda? What is a good translation of this Upanishad, that Upanishad, this Purana? And I'll say that the number of Vedic scriptures that has been perfectly translated, I could count on the fingers of, let's say, 2 hands. To find good translations is difficult. Now again, this translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam, this specific translation is not Prabhupada's. Prabhupada's I would consider a perfect translation. But he stopped translating what chapter into the 10th canto? 14?
1364.
No, it is 13.
Okay, very good. Prabhupada stopped translating Srimad Bhagavatam, 10th canto, chapter 13. The rest was translated by one of his disciples who did an adequate translation for the most part. Here he was wrong. So I wanted to point that out, that we have to be very careful. Sanskrit is not something you play with. A lot of people like to play with Sanskrit. Sanskrit is the most exacting language upon the face of the earth. Playing with Sanskrit is like playing with a laser beam, powerful enough to pierce a planet. And you think you're just going to play with it. No, we have to be very, very careful. Very good. The last thing I'm going to say about this verse, well, 2 things actually. The last 2 things. First of all, and Dharma is your heart. Again, that is the correct translation. I looked at the Sanskrit. Again, he mistranslated as religion is, and religion is your heart. It's actually Dharma. Dharma is your heart. And that we did fix here. Because very often, again, the translator will translate Dharma as religion. Dharma is much more than religion. It is natural law. So Dharma is the very heart of God. Now, why is this important for us to understand? This is why Dharma is the foundation of everything. This is why if you claim to be a legitimately spiritual person, sects and denominations aside, we don't care about the sects and denominations and those who don't even understand the word Dharma. If you do understand Dharma and you claim to be a spiritual person, Dharma must be at the heart of all modes of behavior that you engage in every way. There is no such thing as being a spiritual person and you're going to reject Dharma. That does not exist. This is the ancient, universal understanding of humanity. That too, but that's not important. Of all the greatest beings in humanity, that's more important. In other words, you go back far enough, that is pre-Abrahamic, and even alongside the Abrahamic, such individuals as let's say Lao Tzu or Confucius or many of the Greco-Roman philosophers, especially people like Plato and Plotinus. For that matter, even Aristotle actually would fully agree with this. When it comes to the idea of natural law is the highest constitution of the cosmos. There is no going beyond Dharma. There is no leaving Dharma in the dust as you're traversing toward whatever in the world you think you're traversing to. If you think you're leaving Dharma in the dust to traverse to something, let me tell you, you are traversing toward a fate that you actually don't want to face. But when it comes to truly knowing that which is indeed, again, the absolute truth, we follow Dharma from beginning to end. When you are a beginning student, meaning that literally you became a vegetarian a week ago and you began meditating 5 days ago, or if you are a being who you have not only achieved liberation, but you have achieved liberation to the point where other liberated beings come and offer their obeisances unto you, regardless of where you find yourself, you follow Dharma. That is, you follow natural law. Because it is, as the verse says, the very heart of God. And the last thing I'm going to say about these two verses, you are indeed the original puruṣa, creator of the worlds. What does puruṣa mean? Well, in accordance with, again, true Sanskrit understanding, that is, if you go to the original Sanskrit dictionaries, if you go to Panini's Ashtadhyayi, which is the oldest extant grammar on Sanskrit that we have, etc. Again, if you go to all the traditional dictionaries, no, not Monier Williams, I'm talking about the dictionaries that are 2,000, 3,000 years old, if not older, puruṣa means person. It means person. That's it, person. Now, of course, the context is important. If you're speaking to a human, yes, you are a puruṣa, mini puruṣa. If you're speaking about God, God is a puruṣa, the source of all puruṣas. Now, what is meant by puruṣa? Person, person, person. God is a person. God is not a thing. God is not your tool, your hammer, your plaything, your vending machine, your entertainment system. God is not your video game. God is a person, but the supreme person, Parama Puruṣa, the supreme person. And indeed, Lord Shiva himself makes this very clear. Let's go on now to the next verses. Next we go to verse 37 of, again, 10th Canto, chapter 63. Your current descent into the material realm, O Lord of unrestricted power, is meant for upholding the principles of justice and benefiting the entire universe. We demigods, each depending on your grace and authority, develop the 7 planetary systems. Very nice. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful verse. So here again we have confirmation of what I was saying before, that indeed we are not polytheists in the strict academic sense of that term, but rather we understand that, oh yes, there are a myriad, actually more than you can conceive, of gods and goddesses. there are terrestrial, there are celestial, there are atmospheric gods and goddesses, and then there are other beings as well. We understand this. Indeed, we understand this better than the so-called polytheist does. But what we also understand that the polytheist does not is that all such beings, however powerful they are, how powerful are they? Some are so powerful that they can create a planet, indeed, multiple planets. That's how powerful some of them are. And yet, all of them, bar none, are servants of the Supreme. Let's quickly go through this. Your current descent into the material realm. Now, what is he talking about? He's talking specifically about Krishna. Because this is found in Krishna Lila in the 10th canto. And indeed, a battle had just occurred. I'm not going to give the full story. You can look it up yourself. But he's addressing Krishna as Narayana, Narayana being the source of Krishna. But he's saying, your current descent into the material realm. So, again, Krishna, O Lord of unrestricted power, that is God. Our power is restricted. However great in our stupid egotism that we think we are, however great we think we have the potential to become even. Oh, we have great potential. But of course, who am I addressing? I'm addressing the demonic out there, who think that their potential is literally infinite, who themselves want to become God. For those out there who think that they can become God, Lord Shiva here is making it quite distinct that there is one being who has unrestricted power, and that is God himself. That is Narayana, that is Krishna. So, O Lord of unrestricted power. So this current descent is meant for upholding the principles of justice and benefiting the entire universe. Lord Shiva here is explaining the avatar, why the avatar comes upon the earth. Why does he come? To uphold Dharma, the principles of justice, and to benefit the entire universe. That's why periodically God himself will descend upon the planet as an incarnation, an avatar. Let's go on. Now Lord Shiva, speaking of himself and the other devas, he says, we devas, we demigods, each depending on your grace and authority. Let us stop there. Again, here Lord Shiva cannot make it any clearer. That there is, as he just said, we demigods, there is a plurality of very powerful beings. And I've said before that there's a hierarchy of them. Some are, much, much more powerful than humans, well, but not that powerful. Then there are some that are more powerful than those, more powerful than those. Then there are some beings who are so powerful that they are here for multiple billions and billions and billions and billions of years. That's their lifespan. So there are a variety of devas, of gods, but as Lord Shiva here says, of all such beings, you are our source. He says, we, each of us, depending on your grace and your authority. So he makes this clear that Narayana is the supreme. And pick your favorite Deva or Devi. They are a humble servant at the feet of Sriman Narayana. Very good. And we demigods, each depending on your grace and authority, develop the 7 planetary systems. So indeed, it is by the grace of God that the devas now have the ability to make this cosmos something wonderful. They develop it. But they didn't create the land. It's like when you have developers, real estate developers. They can buy the land. They can use the land, they can develop their resort or whatever that they're developing, but they are not going to live forever. The resort probably will live on after them for a little while, but eventually it's demolished. And the land is still there. And the land belongs then to someone else, and someone else, and someone else. But who is the ultimate proprietor? Oh, that is God. So, Lord Shiva is saying, that's our relationship to you, or Lord Narayana. Let's go on, and this is the last verse that we will look at, and it is Canto 10, chapter 63, verse 38. And Lord Shiva says unto Lord Narayana, you are the original person, one without a second, transcendental, and self-manifesting, uncaused. You are the cause of all, and you are the ultimate controller. You are nonetheless perceived in terms of the transformations of matter effected by your illusory energy, transformations that you sanction so that the various material qualities can fully manifest. Oh, there's so much that is here in this one verse. But we're going to try to go through this quickly, actually. There are several things that are shown here. Again, the primacy of God, the fact that God is the supreme, that there is one God, every other being is infinitely. Let me make this clear because I love pointing this out to people, actually. And I point this out to people because of the fact that this was pointed out by many great philosophers before me, many great theistic philosophers. First Vedically, but then a few even in the West, actually, understood this in a tertiary sort of way. There is God, and then there are all the unlimited number of finite beings, which includes the devas and devis, which includes the gods and goddesses. God is supreme. God is primary. God is the source of all other beings. All this being understood, does this mean that God is here and the devas are here? Does it mean that God is 10,000 times greater than the greatest deva? Does it mean that God is 100 billion trillion gazillion times greater than the greatest deva, the greatest human, etc.? No. It means that God is infinitely greater than even the greatest second being in existence. If that being is an Atman of any sort, God is infinitely greater. That is the relationship. That's the first thing that's explained here. The second thing that's explained is monotheistic panentheism. Panentheism. The idea that God is supremely transcendent to reality, but also responsible for and interpenetrating materiality itself. Now let's look at this. Number one, perfect way to start. You are the original person, Lord Shiva says to Sriman Narayana. So again, of all persons, and any unit of consciousness, by definition is a person, not a thing. By definition is a personality, not a thing. Repeat that to yourself until you understand it, and someday you'll grow some compassion and empathy and actually be a good person. If you consider yourself spiritual, but you don't understand that every soul is a person and not a thing, if you don't understand that, you're not quite even ready for the kindergarten of spirituality, because you're going to be an abuser. You're going to be a predator if you see living beings as things, as objects. No, every living being is a person, and this is true for God as well. God is not your plaything. God is not there to please you. God is not there to give you a nice mate to spice up your romance life. God is not there to give you prosperity. God is not there to give you self-esteem. God is not there to make you feel good about yourself. God is the supreme person who is our very source, the source of all. God is not a thing for you to play with. God is the original person, that person who was there before any other person. Now let's go on. One without a second. We just discussed that. Infinite versus the finite. The two are not bridged. They are bridged, but how?
By God's grace.
Say that very loud.
By God's grace.
By God's grace. Yes, the finite and the infinite. This is what makes God so truly interesting when you stop playing games and you actually want to understand what God is. When you throw away New Age, speculative garbage and nonsense away, and you really want to understand God. This makes God so interesting because this is what He is. He is the infinite. We are the finite. Logically speaking, it is impossible to bridge that gulf between the finite and the infinite. Logically, it is an impossibility. The finite cannot know the infinite, except by the grace of the infinite, by which, if the infinite did not have the capacity for such grace, he, not it, he would not be the infinite. This is how the finite can know the infinite. So one without a second, transcending and self-manifesting. Oh, here we go. Here is panentheism. He is transcendental. What does this mean? That God is the source, that he is above everything perceivable and conceivable. Enough said. That's everything material. That he transcends this, yet at the same time he is self-manifesting, i.e., he exists sui generis, is the Latin term. He exists of his own accord, and more, he has the ability to appear upon the earth. Now let's go on. Uncaused. Uncaused. God is uncaused. And Shiva is saying, yet you are the cause of all. So God is karana, karanam. God is that being who is the cause of all things, and yet himself has no cause. You are nonetheless perceived in terms of the transformations of matter. Now we talk again even deeper about panentheism. That God on the one hand transcends all materiality, on the other hand, all of the natural processes of physics and metaphysics, both, that take place within the cosmos, could not even occur without God's presence. So God is present here. The infinite is infinitely beyond the finite, beyond materiality, and yet this is the grace of God, that he is within every single atom of all things, that he is there present in every thought that we have and everything that we perceive. He is present within us, within our own heart. That's the nature of God. Now let's go on. You are nonetheless perceived in terms of the transformations of matter affected by your illusory energy. All the effects that we see of materiality within this material world, we see cause, effect, cause, effect, cause, effect. Oh, I'm hungry, I'm going to go to the supermarket, I'm going to buy food, I'm going to now cook the food, I'm going to eat the food. I'm no longer hungry. Cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. That is the nature of this world. Indeed, this is how animals operate, this is how insects operate, this is how plants, humans, the devas, how all beings operate. This is indeed how physics itself, impersonal physics, operates. Cause and effect, cause and effect. This is known as the principle of sufficient causality in philosophy. The principle of sufficient causality. What this means is that for every effect that you see, there is a cause. God is the source of this very principle itself, is what this is saying. Transformations that you, that is God, sanction so that the various material qualities can fully manifest. So indeed, to state this very simply, again, this principle of sufficient causality, that there is cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect, cause and effect. God is responsible for the very laws of physics themselves, the laws of metaphysics, and indeed the laws of Dharma, the natural laws. So this is what Lord Shiva is saying, and this is where we stop. Again, the prayer goes on and on. You can feel free, to read the rest on your own of this translation of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But this is where we're going to stop. This is Lord Shiva himself, Rudra. Rudra is the actual name that's used in these verses. But there's no one in the entire Vedic world who doesn't understand that that's one of the names of Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva himself is praying to Narayana, and that is the name that is used, again, previously in verse 23 of this chapter. So that's how we know this. And he is stating precisely what is the nature of this Lord Narayana. He speaks of himself as well, Lord Shiva, and what is his nature in relation to Lord Narayana, and what is the relationship of everything and everyone in relationship to Lord Narayana. And thus, this ends here. Very good. Well, I thank you for listening to my discourse. And indeed, as has been happening these days, We don't have time for questions and answers, so of course, what am I going to do? Next time we get together, 1 hour of questions and answers. But this was important to go through these verses, because these are verses that are not gone over very much at all, actually. This section of the Srimad Bhagavatam. Indeed, it's interesting, actually, the latter sections, that is the latter part of the 10th canto, but also 11th and 12th, are sections that not many people are very conversant with for a variety of reasons that we don't need to go into. So this is why I like to once in a while go through several of the verses, concepts, etc., the principles that are spoken of in these latter parts of the Srimad Bhagavatam. But we will indeed end here. I thank you all very much for being here. Let me just say several things before we leave. And I don't say this as often these days, but let me indeed say this now. Several things. First of all, of course, as far as the channel, if you haven't subscribed, it's your first time here, or maybe your 100th time, but you still haven't subscribed for some reason, please do so, because it truly, truly helps. We want to grow this channel as much as possible. And if you subscribe, that will help a lot. Please like this video as well, either now or when the recording is up. When the recording is up especially, please feel free to comment on the video as well. That also is something that's very helpful as far as building this channel. The other thing is, go to our website when you have a chance, dharmacentral.com. If you haven't been there for some time, you're going to be surprised, because we have a brand new website. Several of my students wonderfully redid the Dharma Central, and it is, without exaggeration, 100 times better. Both as far as what you see, but really behind the scenes, especially what we see, it's 100 times better. And when you go there to dharmacentral.com, please take advantage of everything that's there. We have our books that are available. Please purchase our books. You will find that, like with these talks, like with these live streams, our books are unlike any books on Sanatana Dharma that you have ever read in your life. If you haven't read our books yet, please do so. Also, when you're there, please donate to the International Sanatana Dharma Society. We have a movement that is truly a worldwide movement. And the number of projects that we have, that we are working on, that we are going to be working on in the future, would amaze you. But we need funding. We need funding. We need funding. Indeed, a little secret. Before the live stream started, several of us were here just casually talking about our plans for the future, even for our temple here in Omaha. And our plan for the future is indeed, when I say future, maybe 2-3 years from now, to have a much bigger building and land. So indeed, we have many projects that, bluntly, we need donations for. When your donations come to the ISDS, trust me, it all goes directly to projects that we need those donations for. If you go to dharmacentral.com, you just look at the menu, you'll see where you can donate. If you want to make a one-time donation, that will be very much appreciated. It can be $1, it can be $1 billion. We're waiting. I know there's a billionaire out there who at some point is going to be an angel donor. And that will happen, actually. But also, if you don't want to make just one-time donation, even better, become a member of the ISDS. And again, on Dharma Central, you can see exactly where you can do that. You can tithe monthly, whether it's $5, $20, or indeed $500, $1,000, however much you want to donate monthly. However much you give, it will be of tremendous help to us. So again, we're going to stop here. Next week, we will take questions and answers exclusively. And with that, I thank you all very much for being here with us. Namaste. Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Sriman Narayana.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Bhagavan Shri Krishna.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Jaya Shri Guru.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Sanatana Dharma Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Dharma Rashtra Jayate.
Surya Vangsha Jayate.
Suryavansha Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
International Sanatana Dharma Society Jayate.
Evam Bhavatu. May such victory be so. And so it shall be. Addendum. I've never done this, but I'm doing this on purpose because now is the perfect timing. I saw that earlier someone did ask one question, and it is what is meant by Suryavansha. You'll notice that this is one of the things that I say at the beginning and at the end of all of our live streams. Suryavansha Jayate, I will say. Suryavansha is the solar dynasty. The solar dynasty is something with zero exaggeration that I can talk about for hours. It is from this wellspring of the solar dynasty that the earth derives its true leaders, its true kings, its true queens. So, Suryavansha Jayate means victory to the solar dynasty. This solar dynasty is always here. It's been here since the beginning of time. It is as old as the sun himself. It will be here into the future, stretching for millions and billions of years. And it is from that solar dynasty that we have all of the greatest kings and queens, the true monarchs, the true royalties, the Chakravartins, the absolute perfect leaders that we have had throughout the history of humanity. And it is from that same solar dynasty that we will have our leaders of the future. We're waiting for the return of that king and those many kings who will come and lead us into a golden age. So, Suryavansha Jayate.
Suryavansha Jayate.
Jaya, 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 everyone. Jaya, 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 victory to Dharma. And with that, until the next time that we meet, I ask you all please that you take very good care of yourselves in every way.